August 24th, 1995, the day that Microsoft officially released Windows 95 to the public. Today, we'll be taking a look at Windows 95 25 years later. Windows 95 was a revolutionary change for computer user interfaces as it brought many things that we use today, such as the Start menu, taskbar, minimize, maximize, and close buttons. Windows 95 was such a revolutionary change that it makes me wonder, what would computer user interfaces look like today if Windows 95 was never released? In this video, I'll be covering the development history of Windows 95, as well as how it has impacted the way we use computers 25 years later. Before we can take a look at some pre-release builds, we have to understand what Windows was before Windows 95. Before Windows 95, Microsoft had released version 3.1 of its Microsoft Windows operating system, and as the name suggests, it was just Windows. There was no start menu to open apps. There was no taskbar to see what apps were open. It was based on Windows. When your computer would start up, it would bring up the Programs folder. From there, you could access stuff like applications, games, blah blah blah. This was how you navigated around your operating system, and quite frankly, this was not the most user-friendly idea, which is why Microsoft moved on to create a user-friendly operating system, which became known as Windows 95. The first beta build of Windows 95 that we are going to be taking a look at today is build 58S. At this point, Windows was still known as Windows Chicago and not Windows 95. The first thing we're going to take a look at is the taskbar and start menu. In this build, a taskbar and a start menu is added. As you can see, the start menu is more like a context menu instead of an actual start menu, but it's still there. You can't actually launch programs from the start menu as you still have a programs folder on the desktop. Looking at properties for desktop, a lot of these things actually look pretty identical to the final build of Windows 95. However, there is one tiny difference: the X button. There is no X button. Opening up the Programs folder, which is on the desktop, we can see on the right side we have a Minimize and Maximize button, but we don't have an X button. The X button is still in the Windows 3.1 style, which is on the left side of the display with the little minus sign. Clicking on this minus sign brings up the same menu that it brought up in Windows 3.1, and double-clicking on it would close the window automatically. A lot of the pre-installed apps on Windows Chicago are the same that were in Windows 3.1. As we can see, all of the icons are the same, and they function exactly the same as they would in Windows 3.1. Let's take a look at that start menu. Opening up the start menu, we have a run dialog, a task list, arrange desktop icons, arrange windows, and shut down windows. This version of run is not the same version of run that we see today. In fact, it asks you for a command line command instead of something like winver. So winver does not work in this version. In Chicago version 58S, a lot of the attributes inside of Windows are the same as we see them today. For example, the minimize, maximize, X button, menu bar, file, edit, view, those kinds of menus, the bottom bar, window borders, and in general system, we have the start menu, taskbar, and Windows with a desktop. Overall, Windows Chicago 58S really revolutionized the way that we use computers, and it brought all of these new changes to Windows. Dr. Watson is a bug reporting tool, or a fault detector, and Tracker allows you to report a bug to Microsoft. However, these applications don't work anymore, as I'm sure these servers have been turned off since 1993. Next to the start menu, we have a sort of utility menu with Tracker, Dr. Watson, Personal, Recents, and a Find option. All of these would end up being moved to the start menu in the final build. We also have an About menu, which allows us to look at Windows contents, help, quick tips, some grayed out options, and Winver, which is About Chicago. This version of Windows is identified as version 4.0, as many people did not know what Microsoft was going to name their next release of Windows. The next build of Windows 95 we're going to be taking a look at is Windows Chicago /95 build 189. I say that because it identifies itself as both Windows 4.0, Windows 95, and Windows Chicago in many different places. One thing you may notice about this build is that it generally resembles Windows 95 with its finalized taskbar, a version of the final start menu, and the top bar, which includes the X button where it should be. Taking a look at the Windows 95 beta release notes, we can see a whole bunch of information that was not present in the Windows Chicago 58S build. Taking a look at the desktop properties, we can see that a whole bunch of more wallpapers have been added, and it looks final. My computer looks exactly the same as it does in the final version of Windows 95. It has the Windows folder instead of the Chicago folder inside of the C drive, and generally everything just looks very finalized and nice. Now we can take a look at that sort of finalized start menu. Clicking on it, we can see that there is a different image than the standard Windows 95 gray image on the left side. The icons for each entry of the Windows 95 start menu are embedded in the Microsoft Windows image, and in my opinion, I'm really glad that they switched because this is ugly. A lot of the applications have been updated for Windows 95, but some still remain as they did in Windows 3.1. Instead of having that applications folder on the desktop, we now have them all integrated inside of the start menu, which was a great change. In this build, the recycle bin has been renamed to wastebasket for whatever reason. I'm glad they changed it back to recycle bin for the final build of Windows 95, as wastebasket isn't as catchy as the recycle bin. When we go to shut down the computer, we now have an option to restart from here. Previously, we only had the option to shut down, and then it would tell us to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to restart. Now we can just select a button and restart from there. Now we can take a look at the Windows 95 release version. As we can see, everything is obviously the way we know it because this is Windows 95. This isn't a beta, this is the release. The background is the same iconic color as we know it. It features the Microsoft sound, and it has that great gray menu instead of that horrible Windows image. There's no more Windows Chicago branding, as it is all identified as Windows 95. As we can see, all those other menus from the Windows Chicago Build 58S have now been condensed into the Start menu, and the Start menu obviously looks way more refined, way more professional, and much better than it did in any of the beta builds. My computer, like I said, looks identical to the one found in Windows Chicago Build 189. In fact, we can look at the C drive and we can see that a lot of those files, such as the Windows folder and the Program Files folder, are still present in Windows today. There are now more things on the desktop that are related to the internet, such as the Internet Shortcut, Online Services, which is basically a folder of advertisements, and set up the Microsoft Network. Clicking on time and date properties, we can see that this doesn't differ too far from what we saw in Windows 7 and Windows 8.1. We now have the option to restart the computer in MS-DOS mode instead of just shutting down and restarting. Inside of the taskbar properties menu, this layout is still used today, with the tabs at the top and the square around different options. If you take a look inside of Control Panel in Windows 10, you'll find this menu in a lot of different places. And that was 3 different builds of Windows 95. If you think about it, Windows 95 revolutionized the way that operating systems user interfaces looked. Take a look at Windows 10. We still have a majority of the UI elements introduced in Windows 95, such as the taskbar, start menu, window layout, the control panel, etc. Without Windows 95, we may still be using operating systems that look and function like Windows 3.1. Anyway guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're new around here, as I do a ton of technology videos and device restorations. I highly recommend checking out some of my other videos, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.